North Carolina's military history is older than the United States itself. It's a story shaped by geography, by a wild coastline that invited explorers and invaders, by mountains that sheltered resistance movements, and by communities that sent generation after generation into service. From the first colonial militias to the global reach of today's modern armed forces, North Carolina has been a proving ground, a battleground, and a home base for some of the most important military developments in American history. In this episode, we're diving deep, centuries deep, into the wars, the people, the bases, and the legacies that define the military identity of the Tar Heel state. This is Forged in Fire, the military history of North Carolina. North Carolina's military story begins long before the American Revolution. In the 1600s and early 1700s, the colony was a frontier, remote, sparsely populated, and often left to fend for itself. With little support from England, colonists formed local militias, citizen soldiers who protected settlements from threats, ranging from piracy to conflict with neighboring tribes. The Tuscarora War from 1711 to 1715 was one of the earliest major conflicts. It was a brutal struggle between colonists and the Tuscarora people. The war reshaped the region. The Tuscarora, once powerful, were forced to migrate north, eventually joining the Iroquois Confederacy. For the colonialists, the war reinforced the idea that militia service was essential to survival. Blackbeard in the Battle of Ocracoke, 1718. North Carolina's coast was a pirate's paradise. The most infamous of them all, Blackbeard, met his end near Ocracoke Island in 1718 when the Royal Navy cornered and killed him. This wasn't just a colorful footnote. It marked the beginning of a more formalized coastal defense and the recognition that North Carolina's long, treacherous shoreline needed protection. Regulators and the Battle of Alamance, 1771. Before the Revolution, North Carolina saw another internal conflict, the Regulator movement, a rebellion of backcountry farmers protesting corruption. The colonial militia crushed the Regulators at the Battle of Alamance, but the grievances they raised foreshadowed the coming of a revolution. Many former Regulators would later fight against the British. The Revolutionary War, first in freedom. North Carolina played a pivotal role in the American Revolution, politically, strategically, and symbolically. The Halifax Resolves in 1776, North Carolina was the first colony to officially call for independence from Britain through the Halifax Resolves. This bold declaration earned the state one of its mottos, first in freedom. The Battle of Moores Creek Bridge in 1776, often called the Lexington and Concord of the South. The Battle of Moores Creek Bridge was a decisive Patriot victory over Loyalist forces. It crushed Loyalist momentum in the region and helped secure the South for the Patriot cause. The Southern Campaign and the road to Yorktown. North Carolina became a battleground during the British Southern Campaign. Key engagements included the Battle of Ramsauer's Mill in 1780, a Patriot victory that weakened Loyalist influence. The Battle of Kings Mountain, 1780, fought partly by North Carolina militia, a turning point in the war. The Battle of Guilford Courthouse in 1781, a costly British victory that weakened Cornwallis's army and set the stage for Yorktown. General Nathaniel Greene's strategy of attrition. We might get beat, we might fight again, on the fertile ground of North Carolina's terrain. The British won battles but lost the war. In the Civil War, a state divided, a people mobilized. When the Civil War erupted in 1861, North Carolina was reluctant to secede, but after Lincoln called for troops to suppress the rebellion, the state joined the Confederacy. North Carolina's enormous contribution. North Carolina provided more soldiers to the Confederacy than any other state. Over 125,000 men suffered the highest numbers of Confederate casualties. The state's motto, Esse quam videre, to be rather than to seem, took on new meaning as communities sent sons, fathers, and brothers into battle. Fort Fisher, the Gibraltar of the South. Perhaps the most strategically important site in North Carolina was Fort Fisher, guarding the port of Wilmington, the Confederacy's last major supply line. The Union captured the fort in January 1865 after the largest amphibious assault of the war up to that time. Its fall sealed the Confederacy's fate. The Battle of Bentonville in 1865. The largest battle fought in North Carolina, Bentonville, was Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston's last major attempt to stop Sherman's march. It failed, and weeks later, Johnston surrendered to Sherman near Durham, the largest troop surrender of the war, effectively ending the Confederacy. Unionists and internal divisions. Not all North Carolinians supported secession. The Western Mountains harbored strong Unionist sentiment, leading to internal conflict, guerrilla warfare, and divided communities. In World War I, the rise of the modern military infrastructure. World War I transformed North Carolina from a rural state into a strategic military hub. Camp Greene in Charlotte. Established in 1917, Camp Greene trained tens of thousands of soldiers. Its presence accelerated Charlotte's growth into a major city. Naval and coastal expansion. The war highlighted the vulnerability of the East Coast. North Carolina's coastline became a focus for naval patrols and early aviation experiments. African American troops. North Carolina contributed significantly to the segregated units that served in Europe. Many black soldiers trained in the state before deploying overseas. World War II, the military transforms the state. World War II was a turning point. The military presence exploded, reshaping the economy, population, and identity of North Carolina. Fort Bragg in Fayetteville. Originally an artillery training ground, Fort Bragg became one of the largest military installations in the world. It trained airborne units, including the 82nd Airborne Division, which would become legendary. Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville. Established in 1941, Camp Lejeune became the East Coast hub for the U.S. Marine Corps. Its creation transformed Jacksonville from a small town into a major military community. U-boat attacks, the Battle of the Atlantic off North Carolina. German submarines prowled the waters off the Outer Banks, sinking merchant ships frequently. Civilians on the coast watched battles unfold from the beaches. Wilmington, a home front powerhouse. Wilmington's shipyards produced hundreds of Liberty ships, and the city became a major wartime industrial center. Women in the workforce. As men deployed, women filled factories, offices, and military support roles across the state, accelerating social change. The Cold War, special operations, and global reach. The Cold War era cemented North Carolina as a cornerstone of U.S. military power. Fort Bragg, home of the Airborne and Special Forces. Fort Bragg became synonymous with elite units. 82nd Airborne Division, the 28th Airborne Corps, the U.S. Army Special Forces, Green Berets, Delta Force, 1st SFOD-D. From Vietnam to Grenada, from Panama to the Gulf War, soldiers trained in North Carolina were often the first to deploy. Pope Air Force Base. Adjacent to Fort Bragg, Pope Air Force Base became a key hub for tactical airlift operations supporting rapid deployment forces. Camp Lejeune and Marine Expeditionary Forces. Camp Lejeune trained Marines for amphibious warfare, a critical capability during the Cold War. Cherry Point and Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. North Carolina's air power expanded dramatically. MCAS Cherry Point, Marine Aviation and Logistics. Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, home to the 4th Fighter Wing and later the F-15E Strike Eagles. The War on Terror and 21st Century Operations. After 9/11, North Carolina's military installations became central to U.S. operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and beyond. Special Operations Command, USASOC. Fort Bragg became the headquarters for U.S. Army Special Operations Command, overseeing the Green Beret, Rangers, regiments often trained in North Carolina, psychological operations, civil affairs, special mission units. These forces played major roles in counterterrorism and unconventional warfare. The 82nd Airborne Global Response Force. The 82nd Airborne became the nation's rapid reaction force capable of deploying anywhere in the world within hours. The Marine Forces at Camp Lejeune. Camp Lejeune Marines deployed repeatedly to Iraq and Afghanistan, often among the first in and the last out. Air power and logistics. Seymour Johnston F-15Es and Cherry Point's Marine Aviation units provided critical air support and logistics. Military, communities, and culture. North Carolina's military presence isn't just bases, it's communities. Fayetteville, home to Fort Bragg, Fayetteville has a deep military identity with generations of families connected to airborne and special operations units. Jacksonville. Camp Lejeune transformed Jacksonville into a marine town with businesses, schools, and neighborhoods shaped by military life. Goldsboro and Havelock. Air Force and Marine aviation communities grew around Seymour Johnson Air Force Base and Cherry Point. Veterans. North Carolina has one of the largest veteran populations in the country, influencing politics, culture, and public life. Military technology, training, and innovation. North Carolina is a hub for cutting-edge military innovation. Special operations training in advanced tactics and technology. Drone and aviation research at military airfields. Cyber and intelligence operations expanding at Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg. Marine amphibious training at Camp Lejeune and Camp Geiger. The state's diverse geography, coast, swamp, forest, mountains, makes it ideal for realistic training. controversies, challenges, and legacies. Camp Lejeune, water contamination. From the 1950s to the 1980s, toxic chemicals contaminated drinking water at Camp Lejeune, affecting thousands of Marines and families. The issue remains a major public health and legal challenge. Base renaming. Fort Bragg was renamed Fort Liberty as part of a national effort to remove Confederate names from military installations. The change sparked debate across the state. Environmental impact. Training ranges, especially along the coast, have required extensive conservation and cleanup efforts. North Carolina today, a military powerhouse. Today, North Carolina is home to some of the most important military installations in the world. Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg, Special Operations Airborne. Camp Lejeune, Marine Expeditionary Forces. MCIS Cherry Point, Marine Aviation. Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, Strike Eagles. Coast Guard stations along the Outer Banks. The state's military economy contributes tens of billions of dollars annually and supports hundreds of thousands of jobs. From colonial militias to modern special operations forces, North Carolina's military history is a story of resilience, sacrifice, and transformation. It's a story written in the sands of the Outer Banks, in the fields of Guilford Courthouse, in the trenches of France, and on the beaches of Normandy, in the jungles of Vietnam, and in the deserts of the Middle East. It's a story carried by generations of soldiers, Marines, airmen, sailors, and families who have called this state home. North Carolina's military legacy isn't just history, it's living, evolving, and reshaping the world today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the military history of North Carolina. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And as always, stay curious. And that's the way it is. This 28th day of February 2026, I'm Joe Lirosi.